Good evening, everyone, and welcome here to our Reappearance of the Christ meditation. Seems somehow so fitting, at least to those who celebrate Thanksgiving in America. Of course, all over the world, it's possible to celebrate one's own kind of gratitude and Thanksgiving. It's possible, and I'm sure there are moments when we feel deeply grateful for the opportunities that we have been offered. I wonder if we realize what it really means to have been given such treasures of the ageless wisdom ever since 1875. And a little later with the secret doctrine. We have to wonder how it was that Master Moria and Master Kuthumi, and later calling on their associate Master DK, thought deeply that humanity needed a deeper approach to reality. I know, so the story goes, there were some of the masters who really objected, thinking it was premature. But Sanat Kumara, the one who finally gives permission or not, consented to the attempt, and we are still in the middle of that attempt. This attempt involves a decisive moment in the history of our planet. It involves the externalization of the hierarchy of illumined souls, the society of organized and illumined minds that is the hierarchy, and the coming forth at a degree of sacrifice that I'm sure none of us can fathom of the Christ for another 2,000 or so years, supported by the Buddha and other exalted beings. So much on the inner side is engineered so that humanity may rise to its proper state in the Aquarian age, and we just have to be filled with Thanksgiving and with somehow a profound gratitude that some of the most important things in life have been delivered to us and offered to us in a form that we can assimilate. So, I think about it. I look at that range of blue books. Of course, now these days it's pretty well electronic, but there was that range of beautiful blue books, and then of course the secret doctrine and Isis Unveiled, and who knows what's coming next. And that is really a divine intervention, no question about it. And maybe we have to be awake to a certain degree to realize the way that intervention has occurred. But I think that people such as ourselves who have a little bit of experience here with the great teaching can be sufficiently awake to deeply appreciate what has been done for us, for the kingdoms of nature, for the planet. And, in our own place we do likewise, with far lesser effect, of course, but one day we will be masters of the wisdom too. And we will offer our project. And as a matter of fact, there is this interesting gathering of sixth degree initiates every 49 years. and 2001, and well, 2050. That's got to be a very important time, and they think up a project that is in line with the purposes of the plan, the purposes of Sanat Kumara, and they offer their project to humanity and to the planet. So we'll have plenty of opportunity to serve, but let's begin now giving all that we can. I'd like to read a little bit from the Reappearance of the Christ. I'm becoming more and more convinced that every year this book has to be read. It's not a long book, and it is so recharging, so reminding of what's really going on and what our role in it could be or should be. So I'm just recapping a couple of things here, and this is the recap. It says, it's one of those pages. I have to see what page it is, really. Page 58 or so. So, making our way into the book. 58. It is light, and above all else, life more abundantly, which Christ will bring. And until he brings it, we know not what it signifies. Well, maybe, here's the Tibetan identifying with us very much. I think he knows somewhat what it signifies, and it's a great Jupiterian offering. It's with Jupiter as the esoteric ruler of Aquarius, where the pouring forth of life more abundantly can really occur. Aquarius has so many gifts, and the whole idea of the head center of the advanced human being pouring forth, the head center of the master, of the Chohan, pouring forth what it is possible for other human beings to develop. Really, these great beings are, if I can put it this way, for giving. That's not about, being pardoned and avoiding karma and all the rest of it. It's not about that. It's about their whole attitude to give in a proportional manner so that as rapidly as possible humanity may advance. Anyway, we certainly do not know what life more abundantly really means, but of course we know it has to do with vitality and the strength of will and the ability to achieve, in this case, life is somehow the ability of pure being to make itself felt through the will, through love, through intelligence. Okay, here we are. I just want to... We cannot realize... What does it say here? Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to... there it is. Okay. We cannot realize the revelation which this will entail. Now remember that the fifth initiation and all the bounty of that solar Leonian initiation is called the initiation of revelation. And we do see at that point the path that we might take. We cannot realize the revelation which this will entail and the new possibilities which will open up before us. Aquarius is the sign of the new, and its major planet is Uranus, the planet of the new, or maybe that which is so old that it's never been tried, the archetype, the planet of the archetype, which when its power pushes through into conditions, seems a very new thing. It's the ongoing war of Uranus and Saturn. Master Moria said that really is Armageddon, the great battle between Uranus and Saturn. So new possibilities will open up before us, but through him, light and life are on their way to be interpreted and applied in terms of goodwill, love in action, and of right human relations. It's a trinity, it's a triangle. We've been studying triangles: light, love, and life. Or maybe, light, love, and will. Maybe life is an interesting term and often indicates vitality, but it also can indicate pure being. So it has a little bit of flexibility. But through him, light and life are on their way to be interpreted and applied in terms of goodwill and of right human relations. For this, the spiritual hierarchy is preparing and had been preparing a long time. Because from the very beginning, when it was founded on our planet some 18 million years ago, this time of transition into the fifth kingdom of nature for the newly made fourth kingdom of the time was foreseen. For this, the spiritual hierarchy is preparing. This time the Christ will not come alone, for his co-workers will come with him, and these are advanced co-workers. These are masters. These are those who have been trained, high initiates. He had pretty much to do with those who might take the first or maybe second initiation when he dealt with assembling an ashram in the old days. It's not that way now. It's very organized. His experience and theirs will be the reverse of the previous one. But hardly anybody knew about him, and it had to spread all over the world, didn't it? And many people lost their lives, sacrificed their lives, offering word of the presence of the Lord Maitreya, of the Christ among humanity. So theirs will be the reverse of the previous one, for this time every eye will see him, every ear will hear him, and every mind will pass judgment upon him. Maybe in some respects there's no appealing picture here, and DK kind of tells us about the horror that the Christ experiences when he looks at what will be demanded of him. Not everybody is obviously going to say, the world teacher, the head of the hierarchy. No, there'll be a lot of resistance, and it will be fomented by the brotherhood of form, the brotherhood of obstruction. It will be blocked by them if they can. We can freely aid in the reconstruction work. Now remember, forces of reconstruction coming in under the sign Gemini. We can freely aid in the reconstruction work which the Christ proposes if we will familiarize ourselves and all men whom we can contact with the following facts. Okay. And I just felt it would be somehow on this Thanksgiving Day appropriate to think about these things. Number one, a fact. He calls it a fact, right? That the Christ, reappearance of the Christ, is imminent. It's not something for which we're going to have to wait thousands of years, and also not that many centuries, I would expect. Of course, the timing is up to him as he sees fit and judges the condition of humanity. Number two, notice the two spellings of the word imminent and imminent. One with an I, which means almost upon us, coming very rapidly, and immanent, it means inherently within, deeply within something, in this case the human heart. Number two, that the Christ immanent in every human heart can be evoked in recognition of his appearance. And it's always a beautiful thing when we see that Christ energy evoked, perhaps changing the method and the attitude of someone who long has been fixated upon the personality and its selfishness. You know, the story of the Scrooge in A Christmas Carol by Dickens, one of the most popular of all the human stories, because it somehow tells the story of the first initiation and really setting one's foot upon the path. So the Christ immanent in every human heart, deeply foundationally present, can be evoked in recognition of his appearance. And number three, these, are so worth reviewing, aren't they, really? I know we've done a little bit along this line, but I'm always thrilled when I read this book, which is so practical and deals with the major planetary event of the time, that the circumstances of his return are only symbolically related in the world scriptures, and this may produce a vital change in the preconceived ideas of humanity. There are the prejudiced types, the literalists among us who don't understand symbolism not very well at all, and imagine that if God had something to say, well, he would have written it in very good English and in a concrete manner. And anybody who gets into the translation of the old biblical verses, as Alice Bailey did, knows that that's just not possible. So we have to have a kind of symbolic reading. I don't, probably the Christ is not going to show up. He's much more likely to show up on an airplane from the east than coming to the west than he is riding a white horse through the clouds. And it's going to take a lot of convincing of the sixth-ray fixated visionaries before that possibility can be allowed into their consciousness. Number four, that the major required preparation is a world at peace. Remember, too, the sharing factor and the house cleaning factor, but apparently peace is, at least a certain degree of it, is deeply required. However, that peace must be based on an educated goodwill, which will lead inevitably to right human relations, the big theme of Shambhala at this time, and therefore to the establishment, figuratively speaking, of the lines of light between nation and nation, religion and religion, group and group, and man and man. And right now, what we have is so much antagonism and potential antagonism. The Middle East is a very, the so-called Holy Land is not holy at all, says the Tibetan, and warring nations are there found, and they are warring on a very low level and simply interested in the retention of their power. If we can succeed in presenting these four ideas to the world at large, and thus in overcoming the intelligent criticism that all that is said is too vague, prophetic, and visionary, we shall have done much. It is possible, surely, that the ancient truism that, quote, the mind is the slayer of the real, close quote, may be fundamentally true where the mass of humanity is concerned. You know, it's not an illumined mind, is it? It's a very concrete mind and not connected with the higher aspects of mind. So, and that the purely intellectual approach, which rejects the vision and refuses to accept the unprovable, and I would say the presently unprovable, because certainly it's not unprovable, may be far more at fault than the anticipation of the knowers of God and the expectant multitude. So he's brought the sword here, hasn't he? I come to bring not peace, but the sword. So these four factors, I wonder how many of us talk about the reappearance of the great teacher. You know, I wonder. It oftentimes arouses discomfort in the presenter of the idea, and it certainly arouses discomfort in the one to whom the idea is presented. So for many, it's just easier to avoid it, you know. I think Tui and I are doing quite a bit of, skipping around here as we, as we read different sections. So this is the end of ROC, and I suppose finding the page number would not hurt. I think it's page 59 still. No, it's page... Yeah, it's page 59. Well, even if we only read, just a little bit to assimilate this is very important. I suppose, we're given such wealth of occult information, obviously. Just wonderful. But this is the practical thing. It's this that will really save humanity, the kingdoms, and the planet. So this ends on the 28th here, Thanksgiving Day. And over here resumes on the 5th of December. We've got a lot of things coming up. I just wanted to let everybody know that Tui and I will be suspending for a few weeks the Ask program because we have so many other programs we're doing in preparation for the festival week of the new group of world servers. Beginning again on 5 December 19, almost 2020, and may our vision accord with the symbolic meaning. Well, actually, it's a pretty technical meaning, too, of the term 2020. May we really begin to see, and as a humanity operate less blindly. So it's just such a responsible task. Let people know Christ will reappear relatively shortly, and that the Christ energy can be evoked in our hearts. Doesn't mean the physical organ, the heart, though people might feel it there. And the scriptures are symbolical. That's a big hurdle to cross, especially among the more fundamental sixth-ray types, and that we've got to bring the world to a certain measure of peace, in addition to establishing the habit of sharing between people and nations to a certain degree, and clean house. So those are the thoughts that we can take with us. I think they're very important and very stimulating, joyful to participate in, I would say. Now the meditation, let's do a little bit of that. Absorbing the white light, which is so often used to drive away fear and those inhibiting forces which prevent us from really expressing what we know must be expressed according to the divine plan. So we breathe in this white light. And it as if goes through every part of our energy body, through our etheric body and into the physical, and really eventually into every aspect of the personality. These subtle forces can cleanse us and make us far more useful co-workers in the great project which hierarchy is undertaking on behalf of humanity, the other kingdoms, and our globe and chain, and really finally the planetary scheme as a whole. We think about, what do we really want? Sometimes our greatest life intention, well, we may be studying something of value, but we forget what is the most important. And the most important really is that the Christ will again walk outwardly with human beings and will teach them in many ways we cannot imagine, and certainly by example, and it will be a huge impact. Certain great teachers are mentioned in the reappearance of the Christ, teachers of immortality and reincarnation, and just many things that we might, in the esoteric world groups, take for granted, have been taught by those who came forth and imparted the next possible revelation. To humanity. There is a continuity of revelation. Anybody who says that's it, my teacher said the last word, well, it's illusory. You just know. So we commit ourselves here, and this is a little mantram, but wow, it does say something. And in a way it separates the sheep from the goats. We have to say, a lot of people want to express their soul, and that's good. And DK said, if you are among those whose main purpose is to express your soul, then you can't be used for the larger planetary purposes. So, with deep intent, we say these words, and those of you who use the Finnish language can see below. Forgetting the things which lie behind, I will strive towards my higher spiritual possibilities. I dedicate myself anew to the service of the coming one, and will do all I can to prepare men's minds and hearts for that event. I have no other life intention. It's an amazing commitment. And it's very Venus, you know, the union of heart and mind. Venus, the great prototype, Venus representing the solar angel in our life, Venus representing the goal even of our planetary logos. And, of course, the Christ, in some way, a great Venus and Syrian being. So how we prepare men's minds and hearts for that event, that's going to be up to us, but obviously the great invocation is a really big part of it, and to read and study the ageless wisdom also a very big and necessary part. When an image above the city of Rio, it's kind of a guardian statue, you might say, a great reminder, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's quite well guarded by the Deva Kingdom. Many places that are of importance are guarded, and protective devas are assigned. Kind of looks forward to the time when Brazil, with its fourth-ray soul and second-ray personality, will be a major center in the sixth sub-race. A great light is coming, and it's possible to think of Christ in terms of this first stanza or verse of the third of the great invocations we've been given. So let us say together with deep intent and seeing the spread of light throughout the world, emanating from the head of the hierarchy, from the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. Just imagine that light spreading everywhere, and people in their ordinary lives, at work, around the dinner table, at home, whatever, more light. is entering their consciousness, their thought process, and their minds are becoming illumined. So important to stand with the great Lord Maitreya in the spread of light and to really assimilate the meaning of this cross. You know, we're all on the cross. We might be on the mutable cross if we're not yet aspiring to anything higher than the personality, or hopefully we are setting foot upon the fixed cross, which will lead us through blinding light, fiery pain, bitter woe, towards liberation in Aquarius. Many millions will tread this way and recognize the world teacher who will offer the first initiation in some public manner, and the birth of the Christ in the heart will occur for those many millions. So it's a huge change. 22 million years ago, the arrows shot forth from the bow, and the beginning of the individualization process took place for Earth humanity. Now, much later, and through struggle and trial and joy and sorrow, the change of kingdoms is upon us if we will simply follow the example of this great teacher of love, of wisdom, of light, and of acquiescence to the will of the Father. So, thinking of the Christ as the great distributor of love to humanity, we say, from the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. And as well we know, the word return, though used sometimes, is not strictly accurate. It's a return to visibility. It's a reappearance of a great, great guiding force that is always with us, and especially wherever two or more are gathered in His name. But the will of the Father, well, this is hard to understand. And yet He was one of the first, if not the first, of our earth humanity to really understand it in the Garden of Gethsemane. That was the struggle. We get confused, you know, but it was Christ in the garden passing through the sixth initiation, and not so much Jesus on the cross passing through the fourth initiation, but before the opportunity could be offered to any initiate such as Jesus, mastership had to be achieved, and then the possibility would be there to really conform to the will of God. Not my will, Father, but thine be done. A huge statement, sometimes used in relation to the fourth degree in a kind of sorrowful way and so forth. But the real application is to the sixth degree, the anchoring of that gossamer thread upon the earth, the thread of the will of God. Now, maybe we can get just a little bit of that from Shambhala, and by tuning in on the acquiescence of the Christ, we're told that those who do the will of God shall know, not the other way around. And the will of God demands the expression of the divine plan, which reflects in time and space the divine purpose. So to live according to that purpose as much as we can absorb it. And the third stanza tells us about that. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. I think very little of that purpose is known to us, but we do know that the great invocation somehow contains it: the light, the love, the power, and the expression of those three by an awakening humanity which is willing to expend the effort to make sure that light, love, and power are widely distributed throughout humanity. And we can always begin now. It's said of the Christ that he is the great ideal of the Master Jesus. Master Jesus having a, sixth ray soul, and probably one of his monadic rays, the sixth ray. And this image represents the lofty idealism it takes to reach the great Lord, but even more, it takes the love to reach the great Lord. So, if we take this whole matter seriously, we'll do our best with as much skill and action as we have to make sure that other people who can be influenced, brought to a degree of new thought, understand what hierarchy really is, what the Christ really is, the truth of these matters conveyed so symbolically, you know. The great Lord is upon the planet, within the planet, has access to all the 7 planes of the cosmic physical plane, and is faithful to his promise, which is articulated here. And so, thinking about what it really means, let us say together, sensing the Christ presence. We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. I know when I was a young person, I couldn't imagine maybe God is a spirit or how it was that Christ could be present, but, thanks to the ageless wisdom and its effect upon really rational types, such as I was, I can see this, and I'm sure you can too. We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya, be with us. And if we can carry that presence with us in all of our interplay, so oft forgotten. I mean, you look at fairly accomplished people and they're high in the social ladder and they are in the leadership of humanity, but is this really what's going on with them? Sometimes it appears it really is not. And more it must be. So we lay our plans. There are many ways to promote the reappearance of the Christ. We teach people. We spread the great invocation. We are lucid and clear in our explanations so that those who are fixated upon certain symbolic forms as if they were reality can begin to see wider possibilities. Anyway, we lay plans every week. This is on our mind. Forgetting the things which lie behind, we shall strive towards our higher spiritual possibilities. We dedicate ourselves anew to the service of the coming one, and will do all we can to prepare men's minds and hearts for that event. And though there is so much variety of approach, we have no other life intention. So friends, this concludes our meditation for tonight, and we'll have a little bit of music, maybe if I can find it here, from the oratorio, the reappearance of the Christ. This next song is done by Peter Halverson, wonderful baritone bass baritone from up in the northern part of the United States, and it goes ahead to a time when Christ will have completed his task, and so many will have been redeemed, and that he and the Buddha will pass on to other service that we cannot really dream of. The seventh initiation will be taken, and the eighth begun, I suspect, and the possibility of being partially on the cosmic astral plane and partially on the cosmic physical plane will be presented to them, I suspect. I don't pontificate on it, I just think it's a possible working hypothesis here. So this is called Farewell, And we will close our meditation with it, and tomorrow is Friday. We will have our Dissipation of Glamour webinar at 6 p.m. and then at GMT, and then 8 p.m. GMT, we will continue with our a treatise on cosmic fire in depth. We're at the beginning, the foundation, looking at how the universe is kind of put together, and this is complemented, of course, by the work that Francis Donald has been doing in the Secret Doctrine. So we'll have an idea not only of the foundations, but of the history, increasingly of the history of our planet, because so much is written along the third ray line in Blavatsky's presentation. We'll continue with that. And then there's, lots of other things happening in the month ahead. Our Ask program, as I say, will be suspended a bit for a few weeks while we take care of all these other webinars, and especially the webinars and broadcasts for the festival week of the new group of world servers. So many blessings, lots of love from Tuya, from myself, from Olivia, from the whole team that works hard to bring you these meditative possibilities.
Instead